Hi. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about information filters and how that affects people's perception of what's around them. Right now, I'm in my greenhouse. I'm doing some watering this afternoon. I think people, generally speaking, if presented with information, will make reasonably correct decisions. And I think this is backed up fairly well by Latane and Darley's famous 1968 research project out of Columbia. And within that project, it was really interesting. You had a smoke-filled room that was populated by all individuals that were kind of in on this gag, where they would just be focused on filling out a form. And then you'd have one naive subject brought into this room that was unaware of what's happening. She was ignorant of the whole affair associated with this project. And the smoke got really thick in this room to the point that the naive subject had to wave the smoke out of her face or his face. And what was interesting is the naive subject would look around and everybody else was instructed, don't react to the smoke. Just stay there, focus on the papers you're going to fill out. And the naive person would look around and think, well, hey, why isn't anybody else reacting? I guess I'm not going to react either. It came out that about 90% of the overall population that was tested would not react. They would simply look around and follow the herd. Whatever the herd was doing, that's what they would do. And only about 10% of the population would react and say, folks, we got a fire, there's a problem, let's do something about this. Now, there's a lot of other studies that back this up. But what I think is interesting is this principle, this 90% versus 10% principle, that seems to be mimicked throughout society. Now, some ways you can use this is if you can control the information around a population, you can control 90% of the people in that population and create an echo chamber, just like in this Latane and Darley experiment. So if you were strategic about things, what you would want to do is control the narrative. If you wanted to change a rising population, what would you do? You control the education system. If you wanted to control a population of mature adults, what would you do? Control the news sources, the media, the entertainment, whatever information they're going to get. And in an age of the internet and televisions, controlling the Hollywood's products and owning the media sources is beneficial. I want to use an example from history. Recent history, and that was the Times AOL Warner merger and how popular it was because a lot of people in the know recognized what a powerful tool this was. I use Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling as an example. I believe it was her, and I have this from an individual that worked at AOL Time Warner, and he told me about this situation. So the publicist that wanted to basically expand J.K. Rowling's influence, they paid a certain sum, I believe it was around $50, could be wrong, $50 million, could be wrong, to this AOL Time Warner. And what they did is you would talk about Harry Potter. You wouldn't even know about it. But keep in mind, AOL Time Warner was this huge conglomerate of different media sources, whether it's the internet or CNN or you name it, a whole bunch of news sources. So you'd have a commentator on CNN. And what they would do is say, hey, have you heard of this book, this Harry Potter? It's incredible. I loved it. And then the person, on the other side of that discussion would say, yeah, it was just unbelievable. Another outlet for AOL Time Warner, you'd hear the same thing. They'd just be reading a script, the commentators, the anchor people, whatever. But the people in the audience, the people listening to this via their televisions, they didn't know that this was all scripted. And what happened was, everybody said, man, these people think AOL, all these different newscasters are saying this all at the same time, must be correct. And that's what exploded J.K. Rowling's influence. That's how she became so successful. It wasn't that Harry Potter was exceptional in comparison with some other exceptional books. There's books out there that are unknown, that are equally or even potentially more exceptional. But what it did is it effectively castrated the authors of those other books from being on the platform of the market because of this propaganda. And that's the point. When you have these huge corporations like Comcast or other groups that, or Gannett, former Gannett, that own, hundreds of newspapers or multiple stations, that they can collude together for talking points. And it's obvious. It's obvious when you do a comparative analysis of the different sources that there is collusion in place. I'll use a specific example that I thought was very interesting. This, back in 2016, I set up a monitor. One side was CNN, one side was Fox News. And they both, at the time, CNN would still stream the Trump rallies. So they both live streamed these Trump rallies, and then they would provide commentary. And when I watched CNN, it was like they didn't even watch the rally. It was bizarre. It was just an alternate universe. And the people that just listened to the commentary of CNN, well, they never would have known. They would never even have bothered looking at what Trump actually said. They would just listen to the snippets. Same thing with COVID-19. It was mind-numbing, the false information that was there. It was so, you had studies out there. Let me use one specific example. Hydroxychloroquine. I think it was March of 2020, there was a CNN, actually it ran on multiple platforms, talking about the harsh side effects of hydroxychloroquine in treating viruses. Because some terminally ill patients with COVID-19 were treated with this particularly award-winning medicine. It was a fabulously successful medicine. And what the headlines ran were that these horrific heart-related illnesses were happening because hydroxychloroquine was administered to these ill people. No one covered the truth on this. That the levels of prescribed medicine was on decigram servings on a 6-hour periodicity when you're normally dealing with milligrams, once or twice a day. It was mind-numbing. And I actually made a post on Facebook with I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and a lot of my friends out in Portland, they just derided me. I said, look, I've looked at the data. And they said, oh, we've looked at the science. Follow the science. It was a coined term that these media people used. And I had so many individuals, usually not overly bright, but they thought they were educated, clearly in that 90% category, that would tell me that I'm just a brainwashed idiot, and actually read the actual research project. And it was painful. It was just unbelievable. And it just demonstrates the power of this information filter, that we need to be very well aware of the information we're being fed. And right now, we don't dig into it. We don't look. People don't care. And that's what's frightening. We're coming to a point where freedom of speech is no longer valid. If I have speech that differs from the mainstream perspective, I'm labeled as a racist or somebody out of touch or somebody dumb. This is a dangerous perspective because it leads to genocide. It leads to catastrophe. It leads to the killing of Jews, as it did, if you go back and look at the propaganda from the late 1930s in Germany. This isn't a good place for any society. And I just worry because the youth, I talk to some of these people out of places like Oregon State University, fresh graduates. They have no comparative analysis skills. And I don't know what to do about it. I really don't know what to do other than, no, I recognize that with this level of propaganda, coupled with the future of artificial intelligence and growing technology and huge dispersions in terms of who has money and who doesn't, differences, deviations, that the only solution is to be individually prepared, to have a good safety net for family and community. Because sooner or later, just like the proverbial apple farmer in the rural districts around Moscow back in 1917, thinking, oh, this will pass, this Bolshevikism is going to pass. It doesn't. You're going to get your heads chopped off, like in 1796 in France, if you don't agree with a particular group of rabble-rousers. So I don't know what's going to come of it, but the only solution I see is to be food independent. That's it. I don't see any other way. If you have food independence, you can weather the storms and help your friends weather the storms. Hey, I just wanted to share my insights with you. I hope you have a good day.